How does a filmmaker know how much to spend in order to get their money back?
Great question. This is where filmmakers, get upset with distributors because they usually get screwed by distributors. That's the truth. Because distribution's a whole different business mindset. They don't have the sensitivity to filmmakers. But distributors do serve a very good function in the industry. I mean, they do know how much a movie is worth, where to monetize it, where to sell it, and they have a pretty good idea of how much they're going to get for it. So the best way to find out, what sort of the range will be through a distributor. Now, there are sales agents who do these forecasts for you. They give you these ranges. Most indie films, when they're, trying to get financed, they'll get a sales agent to do a range. And I've seen so many of them. I don't know if you've seen them, but there's the low, the middle, and the high. Sometimes there's 5 of them, right? They're forecasts based on, other like films or comparisons. I mean, you have to be super careful that you're comparing it to like films in the same sort of time frame. Like sometimes they'll compare to like films that were released 10 years ago. Well, I mean, 10 years ago was a completely different market than today, right? So you want the comps to be as, accurate as possible. But they'll do these comparisons and they'll say, the middle range is sort of what you can expect. And it sort of is what you can expect. I mean, these are people that do this for a living. They know where ultimately they're going to sell it, what the market will bear, internationally and from each player. And they do forecasts that give you a pretty good idea. Not dead on, but at least a range. And that's the best way to gauge it.
So similar to how a realtor would run comps on well, this is a fixer and this is the square footage, and so I think yours will go for this, or this one is, you've just redone the kitchen and bathroom and you've got a huge lot. Similar?
Correct. That's exactly the same thing. I mean, I think real estate's a little bit more predictable and accurate because it's confined area, whereas film is the whole world, but it's the same concept.
Does that mean if I pick up the phone and just call a distributor, they'll give me an idea of what my budget should be?
Not necessarily. I mean, we should talk a little bit about distributors and how to find a distributor and, who's reputable and who will give you, the right answer, assuming they'll even answer your phone call. There are, you can pay for this. There are services that provide that. They charge a lot, and I think they're a bit of a ripoff. I mean, I only think that because I do my own forecast based on my own, market knowledge. But if you don't have any access to anything else, then you can pay for that. And I forget, there's some big companies that actually do that. They provide those forecasts and they do comp reports. I mean, they're fancy and they give you the whole thing. And you take those to investors and say, here, I got this report done from this company who specializes in this, and they're credible. There's sales agents. So there's a difference between a sales agent and a distributor. I mean, that line is sort of crossing over these days a little bit more. But an agent will say, this is what, they can tell you sort of what to expect. And they're easier to get to than distributors. A distributor generally wants to look at the movie when it's finished, and that's why they're harder to get to. They don't really want to look at the script or the idea or be pitched on it. They would be able to tell you, and if you can get to them, and we can talk a minute about how to get to them, then you can say, I want to make a $800,000 horror film, and it's going to have this number of special effects and no talent. Then they can say, expect to get 800,000 or $1 million or whatever they could say that off the cuff over a coffee. They don't need to go and do analysis or anything like that. These people know this. This is what they do. So how do you find a distributor, and how do you get an honest answer? It's getting tougher and tougher to find a reputable distributor. First of all, that business is getting tougher. So, I mean, the world is changing. People's viewing habits are changing. So consumption of movies is changing. I mean, a lot of it now is through the streamers, through the subscription video on demand services, the Netflix, the Hulus, the Disney Pluses. It's easy for consumers. They're spending, $5 to $10 a month and getting an incredible array of fantastic product. It's made movie watching such a pleasure. And look at the quality of product they're getting on some of these. I mean, it's incredible the amount, that these streamers spend on product, because it's a volume game, they can afford it, right? So that's making distribution more difficult. So distributors are falling by the wayside also. So they're getting far and fewer between, and they generally want to deal with bigger budget product. They're not crazy about dealing with low budget product for the same reason a real estate agent is not as crazy about, doing a $100,000 rent sale than a $5 million sale. Same amount of work, much less commission. So they want to deal with bigger stuff because, they'll make more money off of it. But to find a reputable distributor, you start, there's different ways you can go about it depending on who you are and what your resources are. You can go to a market like the American film market or something like that, register for it. It's not cheap, but that will give you access to all the distributors who are registered there, plus access to their guide who's registered in the American Film Marketing Association. You can do the same with, say, Reed Meadham, who runs MIPCOM or that type of thing. So once you get into their database, like when you register as a buyer or seller or whatever, an attendee for a major market like that, half the value is going to the market and, hobnobbing and seeing what goes on. The other half is having access to the database. So then now you have this, say, with the case of MIPTV or MIPCOM, there's 2,000 to 3,000 distributors in that book and in their database. So now you got to contact them. You got to reach out, and it's like any type of networking. You try to be brief, explain, that you're a filmmaker making this kind of movie. Here's what it's going to be. Dress it up a little bit. You got to sell yourself a bit, and say you just want to. You're interested in taking it to them after the movie's finished, but you want to get an indication of sort of what budget range you should be working in to make sure that you're not gonna, you have a chance of actually recouping. And some of them will be cooperative, like anything else in the world. Half of them will be rude. And the other ones, then you just hopefully get lucky and you get somebody on the phone who's, nice and will give you, or not even on the phone, through an email or whatever the case may be. And if you can't do it that way, you're going to have to pay to get a report.
And with this report, some of the comps, again, special effects, no-name talent. What about like locations? How many locations you plan to shoot, things like that? Is that factor in?
Everything factors in depending on who you get, because it's all so subjective, but it doesn't really totally factor in. The main component is talent. If you have a certain level of talent, then it elevates it into a different category. See, like there's ranges. It's not, like a total linear thing. So I personally think, and again, this is everything's just my opinion, right? Okay, but from my experience, if you're dealing in low budget indie films, stay below about 1.5 maximum. I used to say 2 million, but 1.5 max, because the market is getting tougher and tougher and tougher to monetize that. Between 1.5, if once you start getting into that, if you don't have major talent, like at least somebody who is recognizable, then you're better off jumping into 5 million. Like between 1.5 and 5 is almost no man's land unless you can figure out how to get talent in there. You have a better chance of getting your money back if you do, say, a $5 million movie that has named talent than you do of doing a $3 million movie that's really, really well done but doesn't have named talent. Because talent sells. Talent's a huge fact. Most distributors, the first question they ask is, who's in it? And the reason they ask that is because most consumers ask that. They say, hey, I heard this movie, who's in it? That's 90% of what people ask, so who's in it? And when they recognize somebody, they might take a chance with it.
So if you do go to AFM or MIPCOM or something like that, then you would look at the distributors and make sure you're reaching out to ones that are going to be in your genre. Like, if you have a rom-com, don't go to only horror. Yeah,
and if you have a narrative, don't go to a documentary. Some people only specialize in factual, some in non-scripted. There are those are all listed also. They are all categorized. People when the distributors list in the databases, they fill out a form and they say, this is who we are, this is what we sell, this is what we specialize in. Yeah, so try to hone in on the distributor that would be most suitable to what you're making.
And keep the email brief.
It's funny, I'm talking so much right now, but generally I write super brief emails and I keep my correspondence super brief. And that's because we live in a world of super short attention spans now. I mean, people don't like to read a lot. Everything's sound bites. Everything is super quick. Everything is, you know, Twitter feeds and Instagram posts and stuff like that. It's all super, super short. And with younger executives who, you know, are now used to all this technology, they just don't want to read long emails and don't want to hear long pitches and all this kind of stuff. Get to the point quickly.